Hey everyone, welcome to a deep dive. And today we're talking about a style I know you're curious about. Transitional interior design.
Oh, yeah, it's a popular one.
It really is. We've got some great articles here ready to break it all down for you. The history, the key elements, and how you can use it in different rooms.
Yeah.
It's often described as the best of both worlds.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, best of both worlds, because it blends classic and contemporary.
Exactly. So maybe we should start there. What is transitional style? It's more than just mixing old and new,
Right.
right?
It's about creating a space that feels both timeless and current.
Yeah.
It appeals to people who love traditional elegance, but also want a more fresh and open feel.
Gotcha. So it's not about being stuck in the past
Mm-hmm.
or chasing every new trend.
No, not at all.
So where did this whole idea come from?
Well, it really emerged as a response to a feeling that traditional design was becoming, well, a little too formal, too stuffy for modern life.
I can see that.
But on the flip side, purely modern spaces could feel a bit cold and impersonal.
Right, not very inviting.
Exactly. So transitional design offered that middle ground, a way to have spaces that are elegant and comfortable.
That makes a lot of sense, especially when you think about how our lifestyles have changed. I mean, open concept living, for instance, you need a design style that can kind of flow seamlessly from one area to the next.
Absolutely. And transitional design really excels at that, creating a sense of harmony and flow.
Like our article here says, it's about balanced simplicity, right?
Yeah. Balanced simplicity. That's a great way to sum it up.
Okay, I love that. But what does that actually look like? What do we see in a transitional room?
Okay, so think about this. Clean lines, uncluttered spaces,
Okay, got it.
but then you bring in subtle ornamentation, richer textures. That adds warmth and personality.
So it's not like some minimalist styles where you're stripping everything away,
No.
but it's not over the top, super ornate either.
Exactly. It's all about finding that sweet spot. Not too stark, not too fussy.
I'm already loving this. Now, the color palette really caught my eye in these articles. It seems like transitional design loves those soothing neutrals.
It does. Those creams, beiges, those warm whites. It's like a breath of fresh air, isn't it?
It really is so relaxing. But I imagine those colors are doing more than just creating a sense of calm.
Oh, absolutely. That neutral backdrop is so important because it creates cohesiveness. It's the foundation for everything else.
Kind of like a blank canvas.
Exactly, a blank canvas where you can layer in those textures, patterns, pops of color without overwhelming the space.
So it's a unifying force that lets you mix and match different pieces.
Exactly, whether they lean more traditional or modern.
So it's not about matching everything perfectly.
Nope.
And even though we're talking neutrals, it doesn't have to be boring.
Oh, not at all. There's so much you can do with those beiges and grays and whites. You can play with different undertones, warmer, cooler, even a hint of green or pink. It adds so much depth and interest.
Ooh, I hadn't thought about that. Now, even with that neutral base, I noticed that we can still bring in pops of color.
Absolutely.
I saw mentions of blues, greens, even emerald or navy.
Yep, you can definitely use them. But the key is to use color strategically. It's like an accent. It complements that neutral scheme without fighting against it.
Okay, so like adding a little spice to a calming dish.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Okay, now for the fun part, furniture. This is where it gets really exciting for me because I love the idea of those classic silhouettes with contemporary updates. I think one of the articles even mentioned like a classic wingback chair reupholstered in a modern velvet.
Perfect example. You take that traditional form, but give it a modern twist, honoring the past while embracing the present, right?
Love it. It's like taking your grandma's antique sofa and giving it a 21st century makeover.
Exactly. You preserve the history and craftsmanship, but update it for how we live now. And you see this in the materials and finishes, too.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Okay, picture a traditional wood table, but with sleek, tapered legs. Or a chandelier classic shape, but instead of brass, it's a modern matte black finish.
So those little details make such a difference. It's not about a jarring contrast. It's more like finding these harmonious connections between the old and the new.
Exactly. And comfort is still key. Think plush sofas, big armchairs, cozy ottomans, pieces that make you want to relax and unwind.
Right. It's not a museum where you're afraid to sit down.
No, not at all. It's about creating a space that feels lived in and loved.
Okay, before we move on, we have to talk about materials and textures. I mean, the articles mentioned everything from smooth surfaces to rough-hewn woods to plush velvets.
You got it. Transitional design embraces all sorts of textures to create visual interest.
Okay.
You might have a sleek marble coffee table next to a rustic wood side table, or a plush rug over hardwood floors.
Oh, wow. It's like a whole symphony of textures in one room.
That's a great way to think about it.
And it's not just about how it looks, right?
Yeah.
Those textures change how the space feels.
Absolutely. It's that tactile experience. Running your hand over cool marble or sinking into a velvet sofa.
Okay, I see why people love this style. It really does appeal to all the senses.
You got it. It engages you on all these different levels.
So now that we have a good feel for the overall vibe, how about we break it down room by room?
Sounds good to me.
All right, let's start with the heart of the home, the living room. What are we looking for in a transitional living room?
Well, first and foremost, it's got to be welcoming, a space where you want to gather with friends and family or just curl up with a good book.
Okay, so stylish but comfortable.
Exactly. And furniture plays a big part in that. Think about a large, comfy sofa, maybe with some classic details like rolled arms or tufting, but then it's upholstered in a more modern fabric.
I'm picturing like a linen sofa in a beautiful, soft, neutral color.
Perfect. And then you might add in some accent chairs with cleaner, modern lines, maybe in a contrasting texture like leather or velvet.
So that classic meet contemporary thing is happening again.
Yeah.
And what about rugs and lighting in the living room?
Okay, well, rugs are great for defining different areas in the room and adding warmth and texture underfoot. For a transitional living room, you might go with a rug that has a subtle geometric pattern or maybe a delicate floral in muted colors.
Love it. Now, lighting can make or break a room, so what are we thinking for a transitional space?
Layering is key. Think about recessed lighting for overall illumination, but that can be kind of plain on its own, so you add a statement chandelier, maybe a traditional shape but with an updated finish.
Ooh, that contrast again. I love that. And we can't forget task lighting.
We cannot. Table lamps, floor lamps, maybe some sconces by the fireplace to highlight art. And don't forget under cabinet lighting in the kitchen.
Practical and pretty. Now, how does all of this translate to the kitchen? I mean, the kitchen has to be stylish, A&D functional.
Right, so a transitional kitchen is really about that balance of classic warmth and modern efficiency. So you might choose cabinets that have those traditional details like raised panels or beadboard,
Okay.
but then you paint them a fresh, contemporary color.
A beautiful gray or even a soft blue.
Exactly. And then pair those cabinets with sleek, modern hardware, brushed nipple, or matte black, maybe.
I love how we keep coming back to that contrast.
It's a key element. Now, countertops. Quartz is very popular for transitional kitchens because it's clean and modern, but also durable and easy to clean.
And there are so many color and pattern options.
There are. And for a backsplash, you could go classic subway tile or maybe something a bit more contemporary, like a geometric pattern.
So many choices.
Yeah.
Now, what about the dining area? How do we create a dining space that's elegant but also inviting?
Well, the dining table is the star of the show there. Choose a table that reflects the transitional aesthetic. Maybe a classic wood table but with a more modern pedestal base, or a glass top table with sleek metal legs.
Ooh, I love that. And I'm picturing a mix of chairs around the table, some with those classic details and maybe some more modern ones and a contrasting material.
Yeah, exactly. That adds visual interest and a little bit of that eclectic feel.
And of course, we need good lighting.
Right. A statement chandelier is a must for a transitional dining area. Adds that drama and sets the tone for the whole space.
Again, I'm thinking that traditional shape with a modern finish.
Exactly. And dimmer switches are your best friend because you can adjust the lighting for any occasion.
Okay, this is all making so much sense. But now I'm thinking about bedrooms and bathrooms. How does transitional design work in those more personal spaces?
Well, the bedroom should feel serene and relaxing. So you might choose a bed with a classic headboard, but it's holstered in a modern fabric.
Like that plush velvet we talked about.
Perfect. And then flank the bed with some sleek, modern nightstands, a statement rug to define the space.
I love layering different textures in the bedroom. A cozy duvet, some soft throws.
Yes. It's all about that haven of comfort and style. And lighting, you can mix bedside lamps, sconces, maybe even a chandelier.
So similar to the living room in terms of layering the lighting.
Yep, and dimmer switches are crucial here too. For the bathroom, it's all about that spa-like vibe.
Oh, nice.
You could choose a vanity with classic details like shaker-style doors or beadboard, but then paint it in a fresh contemporary color.
Soft gray or that pale blue again.
You got it. And pair it with sleek, modern hardware and a quartz countertop.
It's great to bring in those natural materials like wood and stone.
Absolutely. It adds warmth and a touch of sophistication. And for the shower, you can do classic subway tile or go more modern with those large format porcelain tiles.
Well, I like those.
Lighting's key in the bathroom, too. Sconces flanking the mirror are great for getting ready in the morning. And you can add a chandelier or a pendant light overhead.
Wow. Okay, I'm getting a really good grasp on what transitional design is all about. It really is more than just mixing old and new.
It definitely is. It's about that balance, that harmony, that timeless feeling.
It's about a space that reflects your style and makes you feel comfortable.
Exactly. It's your home, after all.
So we've covered a lot, but I feel like we've just scratched the surface.
Oh, yeah. There's so much more to dive into.
In the next part of our deep dive, we'll be getting into those finer details like textiles, lighting, and accessories. And we'll talk about the pros and cons of this style and how to avoid some common pitfalls.
We'll also explore how transitional design has evolved over time and look at some examples of how designers are putting their own spin on it today. So stick around for more.
All right, I'm ready to jump back into this. Transitional design. We talked about the big picture, but now I want to get into those little details, the things that really bring it all together. What about textiles? How do they play into this style?
Textiles, they're kind of like the secret weapon of transitional design.
Okay, I like that.
They add so much warmth and texture and personality, but they do it in a really subtle, elegant way.
Yeah, one of the articles used the phrase luxurious but unfussy when talking about fabrics for these spaces, and I thought that was perfect.
It is. Think about it, like floor-length drapes in a linen blend, maybe, or a really light velvet. Luxurious, but not overly formal.
Right, not heavy or stuffy feeling.
Exactly. And for rugs, think about those subtler patterns, muted colors, like, a faded Persian rug, something like that. You get that touch of history, but it's not shouting at you.
Okay, yeah, I can see that working really well. And what about things like throw pillows and blankets? Where do those fit in?
Oh, those are essential. They're like the jewelry of a room.
Okay, I love that.
They add those final touches of personality, texture, think natural fibers, wool, cotton, linen. You can play with different textures there too. A chunky knit throw, maybe a faux fur pillow, even something like a vintage quilt folded at the foot of the bed.
So it's all about layering those textures.
Exactly, to create depth and interest.
Okay, now let's talk lighting. I'm fascinated by lighting because it can make such a huge difference in a space.
Yeah.
What's the approach to lighting in a transitional design?
Well, like with a lot of things in this style, it's about balance, isn't it?
Right.
You want it to be functional, but also create the right mood, that ambiance. And the articles really stress the importance of layering different types of lighting to achieve that.
Okay, so break that down for me. How do you layer lighting in a real space?
Okay, let's picture a living room. You might have recessed lighting in the ceiling to give you that overall illumination,
Got it.
but that can feel a little flat on its own. So then you add in a statement, chandelier, maybe traditional shape, but with a modern finish, to draw the eye up and create a focal point.
Ooh, I love that.
And then, of course, you need your task lighting, right?
Right.
Table lamps, floor lamps for reading, maybe some sconces flanking the fireplace to highlight artwork.
Oh, I like that.
Even in the kitchen, don't forget about the under cabinet lighting.
Practical and pretty.
Exactly. So each layer has a purpose, but they all work together to create that overall mood.
Okay, so we've talked textiles, we've talked lighting. What about the overall materials and finishes that you typically see in these spaces? Like, what about wood tones?
Wood tones. Think Goldilocks.
Goldilocks. What do you mean?
Not too light, not too dark. You want something right in the middle.
Okay, no super dark mahogany or like bleached out Scandinavian woods.
Nope. You want those warmer medium tones that feel classic but also fresh. Walnut, cherry, maybe some reclaimed wood with a beautiful patina.
And what about metallics? They can be tricky to get right. Any advice there?
Honestly, you've got options. Brass, nickel, chrome, even black metal. It can all work beautifully in a transitional design. The key, I think, like with so much in this style, is consistency.
Okay, so pick one or two finishes and stick with them.
Exactly. You want that cohesive feel even when you're mixing materials.
Okay, now accessories. This is where it gets tough for me because I love to decorate. But I know that transitional design is about avoiding clutter. So how do we find that balance?
Think about curating rather than accumulating.
Curating, okay.
Every item should have a purpose, a story. Choose high-quality pieces that mean something to you.
So not just filling every surface, but really choosing each item intentionally.
Exactly. A vintage globe from a flea market, maybe pottery by a local artist, a collection of botanical prints in simple frames.
I love that idea. It's about telling your story through those pieces.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to mix styles and eras. Maybe pair a vintage rug with a modern sofa or display some antique china next to contemporary artwork. Those unexpected combinations can add a lot of visual interest.
Yeah, it's all about those layers, like we talked about before.
And don't forget greenery.
Oh yes, plants.
Plants bring life and color, texture to any space. And they work really well in transitional design because they bridge that gap between the natural and the more refined.
Okay, so much good stuff here. We've talked about the key elements, but now I'm curious about the pros and cons. Is this style right for everyone?
That's a good question. I think one of the biggest advantages of transitional design is that it has timeless appeal.
Right, so it won't feel dated in a few years.
Exactly. It's not trendy or faddish, it just feels classic. And because it blends classic and contemporary, it tends to appeal to a wider range of people.
So it could be a good choice for a couple who have slightly different tastes.
Definitely. And it's also really versatile. Because it's got that neutral base, you can easily update the look with accessories or incorporate new trends without having to completely redecorate.
So it's a good long-term investment.
I think so. But of course, like any style, there are a few potential downsides to be aware of.
Okay, like what?
Well, one thing is that it can sometimes feel a bit bland if you're not careful.
Like a showroom, you mean?
Yeah, exactly. So it's important to make sure you're injecting your personality into the space through those carefully chosen accessories, artwork, pops of color.
Have to feel lived in.
Exactly. It's got to have soul. Another challenge is finding that sweet spot between classic and contemporary.
Right, because you don't want one style to overpower the other.
Exactly. It's all about those subtle nuances, those thoughtful pairings.
Okay, so much to think about. This has been so helpful, but I feel like we've just scratched the surface.
Oh, we have.
Now I'm really curious about the history and the evolution of this style. Like, where did it come from and how has it changed over time?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, if we look back to the mid-20th century...
So you said mid-20th century. It makes you wonder what was happening back then that kind of sparked this whole shift towards this more balanced approach to design.
Well, modernism was really taking off, but there was also this renewed appreciation for the craftsmanship and elegance of more traditional styles.
I see. So it was like this tension between those two.
Yeah, exactly. People wanted something that felt modern, but also grounded in the past, and that's really where transitional design came in.
It's like finding that sweet spot.
Yeah, a way to honor those timeless design principles, but also embrace, the clean lines and the functionality of the modern era.
And like anything, I imagine transitional design has continued to evolve over the years.
Oh, absolutely.
Like what was it like in the 80s, for instance?
Oh, the 80s. Well, you saw a lot of what some people called updated traditional. It was a more ornate and luxurious take on the style. Think, richer fabrics, bolder patterns.
Yeah, I can see how that fits in with the whole 80s aesthetic. So what about today? How are contemporary designers interpreting transitional design?
I think it's become even more refined. Designers are playing with bolder colors, incorporating global influences. You see a lot of interesting material combinations, too.
So it's still evolving.
It is. But those core principles, they're still there. It's about balance, harmony, and creating a space that feels timeless but also reflects the present moment.
Sounds like a lot of room for personal expression within this style, then.
There is. That's one of the great things about it. It's not about following rules. It's about figuring out what works for you, for your lifestyle.
Okay, before we wrap up this whole deep dive, I want to circle back to something we talked about earlier. The idea of making a transitional space feel like yours, not like a showroom. How do you do that?
It's all about those personal touches. Incorporate pieces that have meaning to you. Family heirlooms, travel souvenirs, art that you just love.
So it's almost like telling your story through your decor.
It is. Don't be afraid to mix and match styles either. Maybe a vintage rug with a modern sofa or antique china displayed with contemporary artwork. Those unexpected combinations can make a space feel so much more interesting.
Yeah, it goes back to that layering we talked about.
Exactly. And don't forget, creating a home is a journey. It's not about getting it perfect right away. It's about playing with ideas, experimenting, and slowly making it your own.
So don't get overwhelmed. Just enjoy the process.
That's right. Your home can evolve and change over time, just like you do.
So as we come to the end of our deep dive into transitional interior design, is there one key takeaway you would want our listener to walk away with?
I'd say it's this. Transitional design is more than just an aesthetic. It's a whole philosophy, really. It's about balance, embracing the past and the present, creating a space that's a true reflection of your personality, your values.
It's about a home that's elegant but comfortable, timeless but timely, personal but inviting.
Exactly. And, as we leave you, think about a piece you absolutely love, whether it's a chair, a painting, a special object. Now imagine how you'd work that into a transitional space, blending it with elements from a different style or era. What would that look like?
That's a great question. It reminds us that we can create spaces that are not only beautiful, but meaningful too.
That's what it's all about, really. Creating homes that reflect who we are and enrich our lives.
Beautifully said. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of transitional interior design. We hope you found it inspiring. We'll see you next time.